Kadosh Boker Or Bekiim Bahalacha, day 78, page 233, Halacha Kavbet 22. We're talking about stopping people from sitting down. So when we're talking about stopping people from sitting down, if a person notices someone nearby about to take a seat after the Chazan started saying Kaddish, the first person should signal him that he should remain standing. It often happens that someone rushes into the synagogue and he sits down without paying attention to what the Chazan is saying at the moment. If the person who's sitting down does not know the halacha that requires him to stand up, or if he once knew it and forgotten it, no one should tell him to stand up in a way that might embarrass him. If one is certain that this can be done without embarrassing the person who just sat down, one may motion to him to stand up. Meaning you don't have to start making a big issue again, but you do it in a nice way, that you make him understand that he has to stand up. 406, Pekudat Elazar deduced from the Shara Kavanot that it is forbidden to sit down once the Chazan has begun reciting Kaddish, but only if the entire congregation is standing. If the congregation is seated, then an individual who was standing when the cantor began may still sit down. Okay, Maran Rishon LeZion noted that this contradicts the ruling of the Ben Ish Chai. Okay, because basically what's he saying here? He says if the congregation is seated, then an individual who was standing when the cantor began may still sit down. Okay, and obviously he says it's not true. The Kaf HaChaim stated that if someone enters the synagogue just as the Chazan begins Kaddish, and he sits down, his neighbor should signal to him that he should stand up. The Rishon LeZion ruled that if this might cause the person to be embarrassed, no one should signal to him. After all, according to Pekudat Elazar, he's permitted to sit down. So if it's permissible to stop him before he takes a seat, it will probably not cause him any embarrassment. Meaning, if it's that he didn't actually sit, it's obviously much better. Because once he sits down and now you force him to stand up, it's a little bit more embarrassing, obviously. Okay, so that's important. Okay, next, Halacha 23. So Halacha 23 says, if someone was seated when the Chazan begins Kaddish, but then the Torah scholar or an elderly Jew passes by him, so he has to stand up because of the rabbi or because of an elderly Jew. He must stand up in the person's honor. Once he stood up, he cannot sit down again until he said until Daminam Be'alma. If the person seated is a Torah scholar himself, right, he's not obligated to stand up to his full height in honor of another Torah scholar. It is sufficient just to momentarily lift his body off the cushion. And since he did not rise to standing position, he could still sit down. Meaning he does like a little bit of a bow. Some people, they do that now for a rabbi, but technically no. For the rabbi, they're supposed to stand up. For an elderly person, they're supposed to stand up. If it's a rabbi to another rabbi, then he could come and he could do a little bit of a hidur, they call it, right? That they pick themselves up. But that, they could sit down afterwards. Okay? Halacha 24. According to some authorities, it is incorrect to adopt a stringency to always stand up whenever someone is reciting Kaddish. This is because it appears that he wishes to display that he's more chassid, right, than everyone else. And it's best not to adopt such a stringency. A guy's going to say, you know what, I don't want that. I'm going to stand. No, it's not good. Says 407. This is the opinion of the Rishon LeZion based on the Tosafot Brachot. The response that Kol Eliyahu issued a similar ruling, right, regarding someone who wishes to adopt a stringency of standing up while the Torah scroll is being read. In fact, he ruled that if anyone adopts such a practice, he deserves to be severely chastised. You have to rebuke him. Despite this consideration, Rabbi Yecheskel Medini testified in the Stechemet that he personally adopted the practice of standing up whenever the Kaddish is recited. Perhaps since he was a rabbi of the community, he was expected to adopt stringencies, right? And it's not considered showing off. Okay, next. Some people have the practice of lifting themselves momentarily from their seats, right? As people commonly do to honor the elderly people, while they respond to Baruchu. There's no obligation to do this, but there is a basis to permit this practice. See below 57, Halacha 8. The Od Yosef Chai testified that this was a common practice in Baghdad. So they used to do like a little bit like this, like a little bit of a bow type of a thing, that they pick themselves up. So he said that was a common practice in Baghdad, although there seems to be no source for it in halachic literature. The Mishnah Berurah suggested that there is a source from Divrei Yamim, but the response of Zecher Yosef testified the common custom is to stand up and bow, right? And he ruled that since it's common practice, no one could be accused of doing this. And that's the ruling of the Rucha Shulchan Epstein and Maran Rishon LeZion, right, as well. The Or LeZion ruled that since there's no obligation to stand up and bow when responding to Baruchu, it's forbidden to do so. He explained that we are allowed to bow during our prayers only at the points where the Chachamim say so. and it's forbidden to bow at any other point. The custom of Sephardic Jews, he asserted, is that the congregation does not bow at all and responding to when responding to Baruch, although the cantor bows when reciting Baruch, following the instructions of the Machzor Vitri and the Kolbo. So again, according to Rav Zion, it could be it's an Isur, but all you have to do is you just, and that's what he says, Sephardic Jews, they don't bow at all. Okay, if you want, you could do a little bit of a little tiny thing, but that's it. Okay. Walking in front of someone saying Kaddish. Okay, just as it is forbidden to walk in front of someone saying Kaddish, Amidah, so too it's prohibited in front of someone saying Kaddish. Okay, look at 409. The Rav Chida said in manuscript of the Rav Yaakov Molcho, containing this ruling, and it is repeated in the Ben Ish Chai and the Kavachaim. The Minchat Aaron likewise added that people avoid walking in front of someone reciting Kaddish in order not to disturb their concentration. But, right, he fell short of equating it to crossing in front of someone saying Amidah. He pointed out that no poskim suggests that it's forbidden to sit down within 4 amot of someone saying Kaddish, while there is a prohibition of doing that for Amidah. Nevertheless, he concluded that we ought to respect the ruling of the Rav Chida. That Rishon LeZion upheld the comparison of Kaddish and Amidah regarding the prohibition of walking in front of them. He explained that although it is permitted to sit down within the 4 amot of somebody saying Kaddish, it is because the person seated still joins the congregation responding Menishim Abba. And therefore he demonstrates that he's not ignoring the Kaddish although he's seated. So it's not worse than anybody that somebody's busy and he's still saying part of the portions of the prayer, and therefore he's permitted to sit down during the Amidah. So the Shulchan Aruch rule, the Moran Rishon LeZion responds to the Chavedat rule that it's forbidden to sit down next to the Chazan while he's repeating Amidah, but it's permissible to sit down next to someone saying Kaddish, since the person sitting actually participates by responding to the Kaddish. This restriction applies back on the top. This restriction applies only when he's reciting the section called half Kaddish, meaning until the Aminam Be'alma. It is permissible to walk in front of him after that point during the passage of Alisel Yeshlema. Those passages are not really part of the Kaddish, although our custom is to add it. So 410, this is the ruling of the Kapachim Sofer. The Ben Ish Chai states, it seems to me that if the person is reciting Kaddish has reached the path of Alisel and you need to cross, you're allowed to do so. In fact, this is our common practice. Apparently, he held that unless there's some, necessity to cross in front of them, right, you should not cross. Although he was compelled to you completed the half Kaddish. Usually, anyone who wishes to cross has some need to reach the other side, and therefore, again, you're allowed to do so during after the half Kaddish. So again, this applies to the first half of the Kaddish. Don't walk in front of somebody, right, during the first half of the Kaddish. Obviously, if you need to do something, you're going to cross. So therefore, after that half Kaddish, after that part of the half Kaddish, you're allowed to do so. Have a wonderful day, everyone.